Good day, everyone. Today I'll be discussing the damping ratio in overshoot and second order systems, which are two critical concepts in system dynamics and control engineering. Let's start by understanding what second order systems are and their significance in various fields, such as mechanical and electrical engineering. Let's start off with how we would create a second order process. As previously noted, this can arise when two first order processes are connected in series. Say two stirred tank blending processes, each with a first order transfer function relating inlet to outlet mass fraction, might be physically connected so that the outflow stream of the first tank, such as this one, becomes the inflow stream of the second tank, just like that. This gives rise to the second order transfer function g of s, which, if I can recall correctly, is just the ratio of your output over your input. That's this one right over here. This, therefore, is just equal to k sub 1 times k sub 2. These are your gains divided by tau sub 1s plus 1 times tau sub 2s plus 1 as well. And we could further express these as a singular value for k divided by the same denominator. However, we also have to consider that the second order transfer function has to be expressed in standard form. That being g of s equals k over tau squared s squared plus 2 zeta tau s plus 1. And second order systems are modeled mathematically using this transfer function. Here, as mentioned, k is your steady state gain. Tau is the system's response time, and zeta is a damping ratio, determining the system's behavior under our transient conditions. As you can see here, comparing this to the previous expression, it is worth noting that the standard form only differs in their denominators. So, there should be a relationship between these two values. And since these are their only difference in the expression of the denominators, we could equate these expressions and we should be able to compare the coefficients of the S terms, from which we can obtain the following simplified equations for individual and overall tau along with zeta. You can see these right over here, tau sub 1 times tau sub 2 S squared, that's just the product of these two terms, plus tau sub 1s plus tau sub 2s, which essentially is just tau sub 1 plus tau sub 2 multiplied to s. Don't forget we still have plus 1 right outside. When we're comparing coefficients of the s in the same degrees of s, tau squared is equal to tau sub 1 times tau sub 2. And in the same manner that 2 zeta tau s of the same degree of s as tau sub 1 plus tau sub 2. All right. This could be further simplified. As you notice, we could get the value of tau coming from this first equation. We could find the square root of the entire equation to arrive at this specific expression. And simplifying, the value for zeta could also be taken from this specific expression. And doing back substitution should give you the following simplifications for tau sub 1 coming from tau and zeta, and tau sub 2 coming from tau and zeta as well, assuming that the system zeta, the damping ratio, is greater than or equal to 1. Okay, to keep things real at this specific part, if that makes sense. All right. Okay. That being said, let's try one example. Let's say we have here an overdamped system. Now, an overdamped system consists of two first order processes operating in series, where the first response or time response, tau sub 1, no, is equal to 4 and tau sub 2 is equal to 1. If we're asked to find the equivalent values of tau, that's the overall tau, and zeta for this system, we could use the previously given formulae, eto sila, to find these specific values. Recall that the total tau is equal to the square root of tau sub 1 times tau sub 2. Given these values, we should be able to find that tau is equal to the square root of 4 times 1. With this, we could simplify this further into the square root of 4, which is equal to 2. This is your tau. This should be around 2 seconds as well. Next, the damping ratio should be solved next or could be solved next. That's just this one. And this is equal to tau sub 1 plus tau sub 2 all over 2 times the square root of tau sub 1 times tau sub 2. If you notice, this underlined expression is equal to our tau, so we could just use that one from the previously solved value. So this is equal to, this should be 2 seconds because that is a time response. No, that's time. Or we could just say leave it as is for now. This is equal now to 4, that's the first tau, plus 1 all over 2 times the overall one that is also 2. So that's 2 times 2. Now this should give you 5/4, or in decimal, this should be around 1.25. This is your damping ratio. All right, and that is exactly how we solve these problems. Now, what do these numbers, or what do these values, what's tau, what does the damping ratio generally mean? Generally speaking, we could define the damping ratio as this one. This is just a dimensionless parameter that measures how oscillatory a system's response will be. Keyword natin for this one is oscillatory. This provides a measure of the amount of the damping in the system, that is the degree of oscillation in a process response after an input change. Small values of zeta imply little damping, sorry. And a large amount of oscillation, as seen, for example, in an automobile suspension system with ineffective shock absorbers. Hitting a bump, as you can see in the GIF right onto the left, a high damping ratio, as in an overdamped system, would um, allow the vehicle to bounce up and down. That is for a very low damping ratio. For instance, however, a high damping ratio, as in an overdamped system, eliminates oscillations but slows response time. Conversely, a low zeta leads to more oscillations but quicker reactions, as you can see in the video. The three classes of second-order transfer functions are summarized in the table to the right. As you can see, if the damping coefficient is greater than 1, that is called an overdamped response. You're expecting an overdamped response. The roots of the characteristic equation, therefore, which is, as you can recall from the uh, general form of our denominator, that is the characteristic equation, you'll have real and unequal roots, better known as real and distinct roots. If your damping coefficient is exactly 1, then this is called critically damped. No? The roots of the characteristic equation in this case are real and equal, or they are real and repeated. Finally, if your damping coefficient is between 0 and 1, this is where the response is called to be underdamped. This is when the roots also of the characteristic equation from the general form would be complex conjugates, which takes the form A plus minus JB. All right. That being said, if we know that when something is overdamped, you should be able to get less oscillations, but would slow the response time, and how the lower damped or the less damped something is, or let's say underdamped, would give you quick reactions but more oscillations as well. We're gonna have to consider how these second order processes would react to a step response alongside the damping ratio. All right. With that, let us try with this one. Okay. So For the step input u of s equals m sub s, remember the step input is just of a certain magnitude in the s domain. That's the magnitude over s to a process. That's the input. Remember the diagram from the previous slides. We're just going to multiply this to k and also multiply s to our characteristic equation from to our denominator. After this one, we could invert this to the time domain. The responses can be categorized into the three classes that were summarized in the table. These could be overdamped when zeta is greater than 1. It could also be critically damped or underdamped. As you can see, depending on the roots of our denominator, that is the characteristic equation, these are just based on the Laplace inverse Laplace transforms of the previous example. You could take this one for overdamped. This is the step response of the overdamped system. This one is for the critically damped, and this one is for the underdamped. If you can still recall, this is for real and distinct roots. This one is for real and repeated roots. And this one is for complex and conjugate roots to the system. And that's just how they usually work. Now, these could be better shown in plots or in graphs. And that is why we have these, the step response of a second order process in terms of, well, the step response. So plots of the step response for different values of zeta are shown in the figure on the left and also on the right. You can see those right over here, where the time axis is normalized with respect to tau. Thus, when tau is very small, it signifies a rapid response, implying a large value for the undamped natural frequency omega n. Several general observations can be made regarding the responses shown in these figures. For example, number one, responses exhibit a higher degree of oscillation and overshoot as zeta approaches zero. For example, coming as a point of reference, you notice from point 8, point 6, point 4, and point 2, the closer the zeta is to zero, you'd have a higher degree of oscillation. You can kind of trace the curve right over here. The closer it is to zero, the higher is the degree of oscillation and overshoot, which we will define later further. Next, with the large values of zeta, these would result in a sluggish response. Let's say if it was critically damped, that's this specific part of the graph. If it was overdamped to 1.5, 2.0, and so on, you notice how you need more time to arrive at the same y over km. No? And the fastest response without overshoot is achieved in the critically damped case where zeta is equal to 1. This is the fastest response without sacrificing overshoot. As you notice, for 0.8, there is just a slight overshoot right over there. Now, control system designers often aim to make the response of the control variable to a set point change approximate the ideal step response of an underdamped second order system. This means they design this response to exhibit a prescribed amount of overshoot and oscillation as it settles at the new operating point. When damped, oscillation is desirable. Value is desirable. No, values of zeta in the range of 0.4 to 0.8 may be chosen theoretically speaking, because in this range, the controlled variable y reaches the new operating point faster than with the critically damped one, or even with 1.5. But the response is much less oscillatory and settles faster than these values, 0.2. Okay? So usually it's around these values that we design, or so they say, our control systems, because it could reach the certain points much faster than if we were to critically damp our systems or our process. Now, as you can see, we could also define or describe the performance characteristics of an underdamped process. You can see here, we have here the rise time, which is just the time the process output takes to first reach the new steady state value. That is from here to here. That is the first time that we reach the steady state value. Okay. Next, time to first peak is called TP. That is coming from 0 to the time that we reach our first peak. Hence, time to first peak. Next is settling time. That is from 0 to the point where the output has reached and remained inside a band whose width equals to plus minus 5% of the total change in y. And sometimes this is used as plus minus 1%. No? You can notice how this is the first time where our oscillations start at 0.95 of the steady state and at around 1.05 also right over here. The first time that is reached is called the settling time. Overshoot or OS is just A over B. This is the percent overshoot and is 100 of A B if you want the percent instead. So essentially, um, the steady state value is the point of comparison to the peak. All right, and that is how you get your overshoot. Multiplying that by 100 gives you the percent overshoot. Next, the decay ratio or DR is equal to C over A. This is where C is the highest of is the height of the second peak of the oscillation. This is compared to the first peak, that is the decay ratio. And finally, 6 is the period of oscillation P, which is the time between the two successive peaks or two successive valleys of the response. So both from this is the first peak and this one as well. Note that the values of A and C are relative to our um, steady state value as well. So note also that the above definitions apply more generally to the step response of any underdamped process. As you can see, the oscillations are quite extreme compared to, a critically or an overdamped system. So if the process does not exhibit overshoot, the rise time definition is modified. That's this one, the rise time is modified to be the time required to go from 10% overdamp if it's overdamped, or no, sorry, no overshoot. Then we assume that rise time is the time required to go from 10% to, that's the time, from 10% to 90% of the steady state response. All righty then. Next, here are more formulas for us to consider. Here is the time to first peak. That is Tp equals pi tau divided by the square root of 1 minus zeta squared. Overshoot is e raised to negative pi zeta divided by square root of 1 minus zeta squared. And the decay ratio is just your overshoot squared. So all you need to do is square your overshoot and you get the decay ratio. The period, on the other hand, is the period of oscillation is 2 pi tau divided by 1 minus zeta squared. So note that OS and DR are functions of zeta only. Okay? And for a second order system, the decay ratio is constant for each successive pair of peaks. So this is better shown on how dependent we are of overshoot and decay ratio on the damping coefficient. That's shown in the previous slide. So let's say, for example, we have this one. Okay, this is quite a handful, so let's try to take this one slowly. A steered tank reactor has an internal cooling coil to remove the heat liberated in the reaction. A proportional controller is used to regulate the coolant flow rate so as to keep the reactor temperature essentially constant. Now, the controller has been designed so that the controller reactor exhibits typical underdamped second order temperature. Underdamped. Previously, it's just the same as our previous example. Or sorry, as what we've discussed already. Um, Response characteristics when it is disturbed either by feed flow rate or by a coolant temperature change. So A, we're asked for number one, if the feed flow rate to the reactor changes suddenly from zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.5 kilograms per second, and the temperature of the reactor contents initially at 100 degrees Celsius changes eventually to 102, what is the gain of the transfer function under feedback control that relates changes in reactor temperature to changes in feed flow rate? Now we're going to have to specify the units for this one. So we're asked for the gain for letter A. As for letter B, the operator notes that the resulting response is slightly oscillatory because after all it is underdamped, with maxima estimated to be 102.5 degrees Celsius and 102 degrees Celsius, occurring at times 100 seconds and 1000 seconds and 3060 seconds after the change is initiated. In this case, we are asked on what is the complete transfer function. Okay, so we're asked for the transfer function for this one. Let's call that g of s, just for simplicity's sake. Okay. If we were to solve this one, that might be a little um, beyond what's needed, but let us try our best to solve this problem. So just remember what we're given. What we're given are as follows. We have here, for letter A, just remember what we want to solve. Oh, sorry. What we want to solve first for letter A is as follows. Okay, apologies. My pen is not working properly. Ayan, it's back. So remember what we're asked for letter A is the gain. Okay, we're asked for the gain. We are given a temperature change. Okay, the change in the temperature is obviously equal to the current temperature, which is 102 degrees Celsius, and we also have 100 degrees Celsius from the uh, original well temperature. Next is the change also in the feed flow rate. Okay, this is equal to from the new one, which is 0.5 kilograms per second, and you also have 0.4 kilograms per second. Okay, this one should be equal to 2, if I'm not mistaken, degrees Celsius, and this one is equal to 0.1 kilograms per second. Therefore, if we're asked to find K, that is just 2 degrees Celsius divided by 0.1 kilograms per second. Don't forget to add the units because these are important after all. Let's try to use our calculators to simplify the solutions for this one. So we'll have 2 degrees Celsius divided by 0.1 kilograms per second. That gives us 20. So that is 20 degrees Celsius per kilogram per second. That is our, sorry, over kilograms per second. That is our gain. Letter B is a little bit more complicated because of how we're gonna have to derive a few equations. So, coming from this side, coming from these equations, we can obviously solve for zeta, and what else can we solve? We can solve for zeta, and we could also find the value of tau, if I'm not mistaken, coming from our period. Ah, yes, this one. We could use these two equations to find the value of tau and zeta. Because after all, for B, we are asked to find the transfer function. Okay? So, I could create a new video finding the derivation, but you just have to trust me on this one. We could create another video for that, but you just have to trust me for at this point. Okay? I have done the derivations already personally, but if you'd like another video for that, we could do that one as well. We've derived that zeta is actually equal to the square root of ln of our overshoot, no, quantity squared, over pi squared plus the same value as our numerator, ln of overshoot quantity squared. That is zeta. And tau is derived from our period, which is the square root of 1 minus zeta squared over 2 pi p. Alright? So obviously we're gonna have to start the solutions for b at some other place. Let's continue this one right over here. So to solve for zeta, we're gonna have to consider our overshoot first. So our overshoot is essentially just the ratio of the first peak. Okay. Remember the the second peak pala, not the first peak. The second peak is somewhere around the previously mentioned 102.5 and 102. That's from the previous value. Remember, the steady state is 100. So this one is the other peak. That's 102. This should be equal to, let's see what our calculator would say. According to our calculator, 102.5, that's our second peak. Or well, the difference between the second peak and the steady state. That is the second peak. Minus the first one, that is 102, divided by 102 minus 100. This gives us 1/4. Okay. So this should be around 0.25, or this should be around the same value as 25% overshoot. So technically speaking, these are not concerned about the first or the second peak. This is just the peaks, okay? In comparison to our steady state. Apologies for that. Um, Now we should be able to solve for this value, our zeta. If we know that our overshoot is around 0.25, we should be able to input this one into our calculators as well. So let's try to find the square root of ln of, let's call that one squared. No, let's call this 0.25. Square natin yun siya. Divided by pi squared. Pi squared plus ln of 0.25 quantity squared. Okay. This should give us a value of around 0.4037. So using this, inputting this back into our original equation, our zeta now is roughly around 0.4037. 4037. Or we could just say this is around zero point 0.4. That being said, we could just say that this is underdamped. As mentioned in our example, it is underdamped after all. Now, as mentioned, we've already rearranged our tau. So for this part, we could solve this. No, that is tau. We should be able to solve for that value by solving for P first. Okay. What is P? P is just your period. Period. Okay. So let's try to solve for P. Exactly how do we do that for P? Let us recall that the period of these spikes or these peaks occur between 1000 seconds and 3060. So this is automatically 3, oopsies, sorry, 3060 seconds minus 1000 seconds as well. Okay? This should be around 2060 seconds. So meaning inputting this into here. Okay, let's not forget to use this value once again. Let's store that to A because it's, the opposite of Z, so A. Let's try to find the value of tau. We'll have here the square root of 1 minus tau zeta squared divided by 2 pi, then multiply this by 2060. This value should be equal to around 300. Wow. Okay, this should be equal to around 300. Okay, roughly 300. Let's approximate just because it's much easier that way. Okay, That's about 300. Now that we are given the values for zeta and tau, let's just recall that we have here k, our g of s, our complete transfer function is equal to k all over tau squared s squared plus 2 zeta tau s plus 1 because that is the general form. Then we just have to write, remember k from the previous example is 20. Okay, so that's 20 over 300 squared s squared plus 2 times 0.4 times 300 s. Okay, apologies, we need more. Plus 1. Our final complete transfer function should look like this. You have here 20 over, how much is 300 quantity squared? That should be around 90,000. That's 90,000 s squared plus 2 times 0.4 times 300 should be around 240. 240 s plus 1. And just like that, we were able to discuss how we'd find the transfer function of certain problems with the idea of the damping ratio and overshoot as well. Alright, now, in summary, or perhaps in a few applications, we could say that the applications of these concepts are quite vast. For example, in automotive suspension systems, a higher damping ratio ensures smooth rides, while in temperature control systems, underdamped behavior can accelerate stabilizations. In summary, understanding damping ratio, zeta, uh-huh, and also overshoot, OS, is, well, crucial for designing effective and efficient systems. Balancing response time, that is tau, and also stability is key in applications ranging from industrial process control to everyday technologies. And that's about right for my presentation. I hope you understood something from that, and thank you very much for listening.